webinar on AR&R 2016. My name's Sophia and I'm the engineer here at XP Solutions, and I'm joined with John, our resident mathematician.
Hi everyone.
We were absolutely amazed at how many people are interested in this webinar. We've got over 1,000 people joining us from all around Australia, which there must be nearly every stormwater engineer. And it just means that we're all so interested in this AR&R 2016 and what's going on and what everyone's doing. So while everyone's joining us, I'll just take this opportunity to talk about some of the things that we do at XP and who we are. We started up in the 70s, so we've got around 40 years of experience with developing software and generally for water solutions. So we develop and maintain tools to assist the engineering community to analyse floods and drainage conditions and come up with the optimal solutions. The team here at XP has been working really hard to implement some of the new AR&R changes into our software so that we can make things easier for you. Here at XP we've got a no questions unanswered policy. So either send your questions through to the website on the screen, the mail address, sorry, or send us an instant message from the webinar panel that you can see on the right-hand side of your screen. We probably won't be able to get to them during the presentation, but we'll leave some time at the end of the presentation to answer some of these. And if we don't get to them all, we'll send the answer through later on. So a bit about us. This is our mugshots. John on the left, me on the right, if you couldn't tell from our voices. I'm the product engineer here at XP. It's actually my second week on the job. I've come from the Gold Coast, the City of Council there. Hello to anyone from the old team there that's sitting in on the webinar. I've got about 9 years of experience in hydrologic and hydraulic modelling, flood analysis, culvert design, pipeline design, urban catchments. I've even worked in the mines, so modelling the whole central Queensland mines. I'll introduce you to John and let him talk a bit about himself.
Thanks, Sophia. So as you may have guessed, my name's John Clarick. I'm a mathematician here at XP Solutions. So my background was originally as an academic at the University of Queensland. I was doing a PhD in applied mathematics, mainly focusing on diffusion models, before I switched over to industry and joined the team here at XP about 2 years ago. So my job here at XP is I work on the core simulation engines. I'm a numerical engine developer for XP Rafts, XP Swim and XP Storm. And my main research interests are, solution methods in 2D models as well as stochastic methods in hydrology.
So just before we get into it, we're just going to run a quick poll because we're really interested in where you all sit in the AR&R 2016 changes, and it might be interesting for you guys to know where you sit compared to the rest of Australia. So if you can just have a look on your screen there, how ready are you for AR&R 2016? If you can put your sandwiches down for 2 seconds and click one of the buttons there, we'll have a look at where everyone's sitting.
We should have prepared some hold music just while everyone's slowly answering.
Feel free to sing, John.
Yeah, I don't think I'll subject them to that, Sophia. Well, I'll just give you a little bit more time, guys, just to get your answers in, and we'll pop up the results just so you can see just how ready Australia is for AR&R 2016.
And it's totally anonymous, so feel free to answer honestly.
Yeah, don't be afraid, guys. It's a safe space here. Alrighty, well, let's close it up. So as you can see, most people answered I've read bits of AR&R, so it looks like everyone's at least opened the book. It is 2,000 pages long, so I don't quite expect you all to read every single page just yet, but it is important to get started because it is out and it's technically it should be part of your best practices anyway.
Yeah, I think that's a great result that everyone's getting into it and making a start on it.
Glad to see no one's answered what is AR&R.
We've got 1% there, John.
Oh, 1%, right. Well, I assume there's an error of 1%.
So we'll just give you a quick overview of today's webinar. As I said, we're talking about AR&R 2016, but we're really focusing in on the changes in hydrology because this is probably the biggest change to date. We're looking at the AR&R data sets, which is something quite new. We're going to give you a worked example. John's going to go through what we're doing, and then we'll leave some time for some questions and answers. So why are we here? Well, the AR&R 2016 changes is the biggest change in 30 years, really, for Australia anyway. And it seems like we're going from 0 to 100. So although this new guideline's out and it seems like there's a whole lot of different things to do, it's a little bit daunting, it's not really anything different from what we've known. You know, the data's been exponentially increasing. The hardware and the software is getting better and better every day. You know, we're looking at GPU models, we're increasing all our model runtimes. It's crazy what we're doing now. And as that's been progressing, it's not until now that we're actually updating the guidelines. So yes, it seems like we're going from 0 to 100, but it's really nothing new for us. And AR&R 2016 is more technical, which means we're going back to Maths 101, which John's pretty happy about, I think.
Very happy.
And actually, as a stormwater engineer, I'm really happy about this too, because it takes away that grey area, which has been, you know, they talk about stormwater being the black art, and it really has been, you know, rules of thumb, and yeah, it's been quite difficult. And making those decisions, we've had to make decisions that could stack up in court if things go wrong. But now we're taking it back to maths, and that makes it so much easier for us. We can make decisions based on the numbers, which has to be defendable.
Yes, Abu, you're right. And I think it's a much more focus on appreciating that the real world is an uncertain place, and we're taking a much more scientific approach to hydrology now than more the art form it has been for the last, say, 20 or 30 years.
Yeah, you're exactly right there, John. It seems all a bit scary, but let's be practical about it. Water is wet. Water flows downhill. We're still going to have flooding issues. Nothing's going to change in the real world. It's just how we analyse it. And of course, duty of care remains the same. So as John mentioned, AR&R is out there. It's good that most of the people have started reading it, and we really need to start implementing it. So what's changed? The rational method. Yep, it's gone. The temporal pattern regions, the types of events, and the losses. So are you hanging on to the rational? I bet there's a lot of people out there that are, and up until about 6 months ago, I was that person too. And I completely understand, because it's an easy, quick way to get a peak flow rate. Whether you're using a small, you know, couple of lots, or you're doing a big urban catchment, that was how we did that, and that was so quick and easy. But the rational method is quite hard to be defendable and repeatable. Yes, we could get the same answers doing it from person to person, but we can also get very different answers. And I don't know if other people know this, but the way we work out our time of concentration, which is a massive part of the rational method, actually changes from state to state. So of course we're going to get different answers depending on who's doing the rational method. And John, I know you feel quite passionate about this, so do you want to have a buy in there?
I'd love to. Now, as you said before, like, it doesn't quite make sense that you know, how you calculate time of concentration changes on state by state. Like, I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure physics doesn't change according to state borders. And the other thing that I'd like to mention is that the rational method was only ever designed as a back-of-the-envelope method. It was here's a way to get a rough estimate of how much runoff you'd expect from a catchment. It's basically an order of magnitude type of estimation tool at best. I mean, the fact that it's been used as a proper full runoff routing method, yeah, I mean, it's good to see that the AR&R committee have actually realised that and gone, okay, let's go back to basics. Is this defendable as a proper reproducible method which we can use to accurately estimate flow? And they've basically said it really isn't.
Yes, we're getting rid of the rational method as a runoff model, but that seems difficult because it's, you know, it's a simple, easy answer. But we're actually going to show you here at XP how you can get that kind of answer, get a much better answer in about the same amount of time and effort. So as I mentioned, the temporal pattern regions have changed. So you can see there on the left the 87 zones. We had 8 zones, and they were quite discrete zones. Now we've got 12 regions, and we've actually got overlapping regions, which makes things a little bit more difficult there for the people in Western Australia and for North Queensland. You now have to look at 2 sets of temporal patterns, not just one. And I'm down there in the orange island there. That's my hometown. I actually got told yesterday that I've got a Tasmanian accent, which I've never heard before, but for the poor Tasmanians listening in, I apologise if that's the case. So we now have 3 choices for events. We used to just have the one on the left there, the simple one, which most people can relate to. They've seen it before. And that's what the AR&R 87 referred to, is one storm per AEP per duration. On the right-hand side of the screen there, we've got the Monte Carlo event, which people have probably just heard about, don't know a lot about. John's probably the expert in here on the Monte Carlo. It requires a lot of data and a lot of computer power to run these kind of models. So that's what we're working towards, but in the middle, a bit of a solution in between is the ensemble event, and that looks at 10 different storm patterns for each duration for each ARI. So we're going from the simple event, timesing it by 10, which is what AR&R is referred to as the number of patterns there in each ensemble. So we're pretty much timesing our work by 10.
Only you had a handy software package to help you to analyse all that data.
That would be useful, wouldn't it? This is a screenshot from our Hydrology package. And we can see there on the left the 87 standard window, and on the right there what we've incorporated into our models to replicate this 2016 change. You can see that on the left we've got the storm duration and the return period, or the AEP as it's called now. So these are multipliers, so we're multiplying the storm duration by the return period to get the number of storms we need to run. 2016, we've now got a new column, the temporal patterns. So we've got the storm duration, the annual exceedance probability, and the temporal pattern. So we're actually timesing it by another column. So to make that really clear in everyone's minds, from 87, we ran all our storms for each AEP, and we found the critical duration per AEP. Now 2016, we need to run the ensemble of storms. We need to find the median of those storms. So for your 90-minute, you'll have 10 patterns in your ensemble, and you need to find the median of that. And then you compare those medians with the different duration medians to get your critical duration per AEP. So it's just one extra step now. And just to visually ingrain that in your minds, on the left there we've got the 1% AEP, 60-minute duration, simple results. On the right, once we times that by 10, we actually get 10 hydrographs. And what we do there is we pick the median of the hydrograph, and that's what we use to compare with the different durations. So why have we moved away from this single event? Well, we've known for a while now that you could have 2 or 5 or 10 storms that have the same burst duration and a similar magnitude, but get completely different results. And this is to do with not only the shape of the burst, but also the rainfall that happens before and after that burst.
So yeah, I'll just jump in there, Sophia.
Yep.
So the idea of this ensemble, it's really to try and capture some of the variability and uncertainty we see in the real world. Now, in the 87 method, we would use a single pattern, and that was supposed to encapsulate all of the variability of a single duration storm. And that's just not very realistic. So now we have 10 storms indicative of a particular storm burst duration for a particular AEP. And now we kind of get this bit of appreciation that, oh, okay, there's going to be, so for every particular burst storm, there's going to be a range of answers. And we need to go, all right, what's the middle, the average answer we should expect for this particular type of storm?
And the reason we can finally move to these, even though we've known the errors in our ways for a while, is that the data's available and the software's available, isn't it? That's
right. So I mean, you compare computers between 1987 and 2016, they're orders of magnitude faster.
Yep.
We've also got 30 more years now of data, of rainfall data. We can use that to build these storms.
Exactly. We're moving away from storm bursts and we're looking at complete storms. So what John just spoke about, we're really looking to replicate what's going to happen in the real world. So I think this was something that was misunderstood a lot in the past with the 87 AR&R, but the temporal patterns were based just on the storm bursts. So we didn't look at what was happening before or what the catchment conditions were before that burst happened. And that's changing now. Now we've got temporal patterns for both just the bursts, but also for the complete storms. And let's talk about losses. Now, in the past, because we were only modelling that burst, we really didn't need to think too much about the initial loss. And if you were like me a couple of years ago, agonising for hours over what the soil conditions were of your catchment, what the infiltration rates were, what your initial loss was going to be, then unfortunately you probably didn't have to do that. But the good news is now you're ahead of the game, because now that we've got these full storms, we now need to concentrate a lot more on what those catchment conditions are and what the initial and continuing losses are. And the great news is that AR&R 2016 now suggests values for us.
And those values are location specific as well. So you can put in exactly where you are in Australia and it will give you a suggested loss values for both initial and continuing losses.
Awesome. So just to summarise, the 87, we had the rational method, 8 zones, we had a single event, we were only modelling the storm bursts, and the initial losses weren't really analysed. Now we do not have the rational method anymore. We've got 12 regions, we're looking at ensembles, we're looking at full storms, and with those full storms we need to start thinking about the initial losses.
That's right, Sophia. Now you can still use storm bursts, but it is recommended to use the full storms if possible.
So just some other considerations that we're not really going into detail today about is the temporal variation. You need to consider that if you're greater than 75 square kilometres. If you're greater than 20 square kilometres, think about spatial variation. And if you're greater than 1 square kilometre, we need to start thinking about area reduction factors. This is actually quite a big change from the 87 book, because before we were looking at 10,000 square kilometres. Now it's just 1. So that means that it's going to apply to a lot more people out there. So just something to be aware of, I guess. We've got the regional flood frequency estimation, flood frequency analysis, aerial temporal patterns, and climate change.
So I'll just jump in there. So for those who aren't aware, the RFFE tool, the Regional Flood Frequency Estimation tool, is a piece of software provided by the AR&R committee. And essentially it's designed to replace the probabilistic rational method. So for those particularly in rural areas, if you have, where you typically would go to the rational method, you now have an online tool which you can put your area in, you upload some information about your catchment, and it will actually give you a flood frequency estimation for that area. For the climate change stuff, most of the climate change recommendations boil down to using a particular model, I believe, from the International Climate Change Committee, ICCC. I believe it's the RCR6 model, if I remember correctly, and it's basically one of the more, I guess, happier predictions that, assuming the worst case scenarios don't actually happen. And so yeah, so that's again something to consider. Climate change, if you are building, I believe, if you are building structures that are designed to last for many decades, that is something you need to start taking into consideration.
Absolutely. So, well, John was just talking, but I'll jump back to John so that he can give a live demonstration.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sophia. So I'd just like to start off again, guys, just by summarising the steps that we're going to be using to do a hydrologic analysis in AR&R 2016. Now, step 1 is locate your site of interest and give it a name. Now, my personal preference is happy little catchment. For number 2, step 2 is collect your data. Now, the very minimum you're going to need to go to the AR&R Data Hub, which I'll show you in a minute, is to get the temporal patterns. Now, they're not yet available, but we do have some sample data which we can use. And you go there to also get your suggested losses as well that you use for your particular site. You can also go to the Bureau of Meteorology and get the new IFDs. Now, in 2013, the BOM released these new IFDs to be used with the updated temporal patterns. Despite the temporal patterns not being widely available, not being available at all actually yet, as soon as they are, that's when you can actually start using these gorgeous new IFD tables. Step 3, you can take this data and add it to your model. Step number 4 is obviously solve your model, which is, I'm proud to say, is one of the primary features of XP Swim and XP Runs.
It's certainly important.
It very much is. Gives me a job. Step 5 is then you run some statistics on each of your ensemble. So each group of 10 patterns, You run the statistics to find the median or average per AEP and duration, and then you determine what the largest median storm is. So for each group of 10, you find the median. I'll just demonstrate. So 1 second. So for each group of 10, what you do is you find the median storm, you compare the medians across different ensembles, and then you choose the largest of the median, and that now becomes your critical duration. So I've graded this area out because we've actually got a tool in our software now that actually does those first 3 steps for you. I'll demonstrate that in a minute in the live demo. Now again, just to highlight what's going on with the median, what you do is you run all of your 10 storms per ensemble through your hydrology tool. So in this case, XP Rafts or XP Swim. You get the hydrograph, and you choose the hydrograph that has the median peak outflow. That becomes now your critical storm and your critical storm pattern that you can use to do design work to. So here's just a sample ensemble. So this is just 10 storm patterns, 10 real storms, full storms as you notice, because it goes for a lot longer than the 15 minutes for the 1% AEP. Now as you can see, it's quite varied between where the main storm burst actually is. A lot of the storms will peak at the very start. Some of them will be quite later on into the storm, with a significant amount of both pre and post burst rainfall. Just a slightly different view. You can see there's a side-on view of all the 10 storms next to each other, and again, as you can see, there's a lot of both pre and post burst rainfall. Now that is important for our losses, because that's going to potentially either saturate our losses early on, or potentially or smash the system once the storm burst has already passed through. Alrighty, so I'm just going to go to the Data Hub website now. Let's bring it up. So this is the AR&R's Data Hub website. It is still in beta, as the temporal patterns aren't yet publicly available. But it is quite nice in the sense that you can just go to anywhere in Australia. I'm just going to drag it to one of my favourite cities, Brisbane. So let's just choose a particular spot here in Brisbane. And what we're going to do is we're going to get our storm losses from the website, the temporal patterns, and we're also going to get the BOM IFD depths. Right, now we can submit. We get the happy spinning wheel. Awesome, and it's returned with some data. So it gives a quick summary of, all right, where is the data from? What regions are we in? You can also show what particular regions you're in for things like temporal patterns or loss methods or storm losses. You can clear it, and down here is where the actual data is. So here we've got both initial losses, so initial loss of 14 millimeters, a continuing loss of 1.7 millimeters, followed by what regions that come from. Now, in the future, when the AR&R committee have deemed the temporal patterns to be up to par, you should be able to download a zip file containing all of the patterns that you need for your particular region. You also here have a link to the BOM IFDs, so you have to click that. You will have to go through and accept things. Excellent. So as you can see, you can go through, and now you get the new IFDs for your storms. Alrighty, so now we've got that. Let's go into the software and see how we can do that with XP. So here's a model I prepared earlier. As you can see, I've given it a happy name called Arbitrary Brisbane Catchment, and it drains to a single node called Drain. So how would we import the data into our software? Well, let's do this. So if we go to our new Global Storms dialog, we can go to our storm generator. We can select from map. And so here you can actually select where your area of interest is from a map of Australia. So here we've just chosen around Northgate in Brisbane, up near where I live actually. Right, so we can do that. And we can actually now, we've got all the temporal patterns we need for all durations and AEPs, as well as individual storm patterns. So it's there if we want to be able to select or deselect particular storms. So maybe after we've done our analysis, we want to go back and now do design work for a culvert for a particular pattern. We can go back and do that. Also here, we also have an extra data importer. So for those people who want to get data directly themselves, if you have your own data management software that you'd like to keep in an archive, for example, the outputs from both the IFD website and the AR&R Data Hub, you can do that and import it manually. Similarly, if you need to import multiple sets of data, suppose you're on, say, the border of two temporal pattern regions, then you'll need to obviously import multiple sets of data, and you can do that with our tool as well. All right, so we've got that. We'll click OK. So there is all of our ensembles and all of our storm durations. So we can close it down, a few of them, tick them on and off, and we can see, yep, cool, we've got all of our storm ensembles we need for this particular catchment. Now we'll just quickly go in and recheck the data in our particular catchment. So we've got a relatively small catchment here, 56 hectares. It's got an impervious about 30%, and it's got a slope of 2%. So that's just some data I put in there before. And we've also got, so now we're going to resist the temptation to use the rational formula. I know you guys out there are probably itching to use it, but unfortunately, it's just not in AR&R 2016. So we will instead use Lawrence's method in this case. So it's just you leave it default values. That's usually fine. And we're also going to make sure we check our loss values. So here it's imported the loss values for Brisbane. Initial loss of 14 mils and a continuing loss of 1.7. Just going to select that. Now, I won't actually subject you guys to sitting here, watch the model run, although it didn't actually take that long to run. I think it took, for all 90 storms I ran through, it was about 10.5 minutes, maybe 11 minutes.
That's pretty quick, John.
Surprisingly, it was actually, I was expecting to be a lot longer. I was ready to go have lunch, have a bit of an afternoon kip, but turns out I was back before I could even have a coffee break.
I don't actually know if I could even do the rational method in that time.
Definitely not by hand calc. Definitely not by hand calc. All right, so let's see what the data is. All right, so let's load it up, and what do we get? And as you can see, it's crystal clear what your median storm is.
Yep, we can go and design our culvert now.
Beautiful, beautiful. Now I know I kid. Now that's a lot of data, and that's coming from someone who absolutely loves playing with data. Now, what we have done though is we've gone the extra step and we've gone, all right, let's actually analyze this data for the user. So we have this new tool up here to help analyze the data according to storm patterns and according to storm ensembles. And what it does is it's going to generate a box and whisker plot for each of your storm ensembles. So here it clearly shows, all right, well, what's going to be our critical duration? Well, it's going to be the 30-minute storm. It highlights it for us and even tells us, all right, what's the median peak outflow. So we can close that down. What it also gives us, it gives us a text file with a summary of the same information. So it goes through for each AEP and gives us, all right, what are the peak outflows from each of the hydrographs? What's the average of those maxes, medians, and the upper medians, and tells us what particular storm pattern that corresponds to. And if we scroll to the very bottom, it even tells us what particular storm pattern and what the peak outflow was that we can use to do our design work.
So that means from now on we only need to run that one pattern through our model.
You're right. So if you need to design, say, size a culvert for a particular catchment, you now only need to run one storm through after you've done your hydrologic analysis. Awesome. So just remember, guys, this is a work in progress still. AR&R is still in the process of being developed, especially with the temporal patterns not yet available. So with the email at the end, please feel free to give us any more feedback you'd like to see from this model. If you'd like to see additional statistical tools, if you'd like to see additional options or features, please feel free to let us know. Send us an email. I'm happy to even give you a call to discuss some of the things that you'd like to see in XP software to help you address AR&R 2016. Alrighty, let's get back into it. So just how is XP tackling AR&R 87? So again, we're trying to make it as easy as possible to implement AR&R 2016, even easier than the AR&R 87. Even if it does require more tools to do things like uncertainty analysis, sensitivity analysis, doing a lot more solves than you've ever done before, our goal is to make your life as easy as possible. We also streamline the data input. So the idea is that you don't have to go to all these different websites and get all the data and store it for you. We'll be able to, with our handy tool we've got, you'll be able to just download it with 1 or 2 quick clicks and have it stored in your model with your model data.
And the other thing is that the database is going to be updating as the new data comes in, isn't it, John?
Definitely, yeah. So they're going to keep updating both the temporal patterns and the IFDs as new data becomes available.
Yeah.
I believe the BOM updates their data every single year, and the new BOM but the new AR&R Data Hub will be versioned as well. So you'll need to be able to go back to any particular version as you do it. Suppose you need to do, say, for some reason, your particular design ends you up in court in 5 years' time. You'd be able to go back anywhere in time and be able to re-image all of your data. That should be possible both through our tool and the AR&R Data Hub website. So again, we've got a new global storm generator. So it's inspired from our XP Raft suite, which people know and love. We've brought that across to XP Storm and XP Swim in order to make, and also XP Drainage, in order to make just streamline this import and generating all these storms. We've grouped storms together, so we've actually, as we said, obviously we need to be able to do statistics and model groups of storms, so collections of 10, not just individual storm patterns. So we've enabled that feature now in XP Swim. And also created this intuitive statistical analysis tool. So you don't need a PhD in statistics just to be able to find this stuff. It should be simple and easy to use and give you simple outputs that you can put straight into your reports. And lucky last, we've also created a new Solve Manager tool. So this is available on XP Swim and XP Storm. What it does is if you've got a multiple core machine, you can now actually solve your models, different storms from a global storm generator or different scenarios across different cores. So if you've got, so that model I ran before in about 10, 11 minutes, that was only a single core. If I'd utilized all 4 cores on my machine, it would have been ran in about 2 or 3 minutes tops. So it's making your life a lot more efficient.
That's modelling a lot of storms really quickly.
That is, and it's just, and look, we're in the business in engineering, let's face it, time is money. And so the idea of this is to just save you time and make your life a lot more quicker and efficient. Alright guys, we'll just that was the end of the demo and the end of pretty much the end of the main part of the webinar. Just before we go into questions, I'd just like to reference the Australian Rainfall and Runoff 2016 edition. Thank them very much for providing those graphs, many of the graphs that you saw in our webinar today. And so we're just going to just finalise, just before we go into giving you guys the password to get your certificates, just want to run a second quick poll. What are you most interested in seeing for our next AR&R 2016 webinar? So we're going to have a webinar early in the new year, at least the first quarter of next year. We'd like to know from you guys what topic would you most like to see us talk about?
Yeah, so there's a fair few changes in AR&R 2016. So let us know what you're most interested in so that we can help you guys.
Yeah, just let us know feedback. If you have anything that's not on that list, again, feel free to flick us an email. We'll happily just talk and discuss different options. That if you guys want to see it, just let us know. We're here to make your lives as easy as possible. So feel free to just answer that as you go.
And we'll keep that going. We'll analyse the results later on and get back to you in the new year. All right, guys, I think we'll have to leave it there. We're running out of time. But thank you so much for joining us, and we'll try and get back to you with the answers to all the other questions.
Yeah, guys, so if you didn't quite get your question answered, we'll definitely endeavour to get back to you the next day or two. Otherwise, feel free, if it's a really urgent question, you can either email apaceducation@xpsolutions.com or ausales@xpsolutions.com, or just give us a call. Thank you very much for listening, guys, and we look forward to seeing you at the next one.
Have a good afternoon.